All right, I will start with any comments from the public regarding items that are not on the agenda. All right, seeing none, I will move to any amendments to the agenda.
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. And before we go to agenda item 5, I do want to introduce our newest student representative, Cole Patno. Applied for and was selected by an interview committee of the board and the board's approval to serve as the junior student representative to the school board. Congratulations, Cole. Can you give us a little bit of your background, that kind of, and your interest in the position, what brought you here?
Yeah, sure. So I am the junior class secretary on student council, and I do a lot with the drama department and the high school, and I intern in the drama department at the middle school. And so that's kind of the stuff that I do. I was interested in this position because I really want to increase student voice in both things that are going on in our school and things that are going on in the state levels. But so that was kind of some of my draws to applying for this position.
Great. We're thrilled to have you on board and look forward to working with you.
Thanks.
Thanks. And Arnell, as always, happy to see you here, too.
You guys as well.
Good. All right, so we'll move officially to agenda item 5, announcements and the student rep report.
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to point out Cole and I met yesterday and kind of put him up to date on what I do, and I just want to say he came very well prepared to today's meeting, so he'll be a great asset. But anyway, so last week was vacation as well as parent-teacher conferences, and then this week marks the official winter sports season, which December 4th is Meet the Coaches Night, so that's really exciting. Tomorrow, which is the 29th, at the FHTMS cafeteria, there's a community dialogue about food insecurity, which is led by an SBHS senior, the school president, and so it's a really cool event which she's hosting, and all the profits are going to go to Hunger Free Vermont, so that's an awesome thing. Last week, FHTMS 7th and 8th grade spelling team won the state championship, and it seems like they're always winning, so they're really good at that. And then before break, Chamberlain School also hosted a food drive with a lot of volunteer help from all the schools, including high school and middle school, and a lot was brought to shelters, and that was also awesome.
Kind of jumping off of that, at Chamberlain, there was a dance performance at SBHS before break. At Orchard on Halloween, Orchard students collected $1,823 to donate to UNICEF. At the middle school, their chorus concert will be on Monday, December 3rd. The high school is also having their chorus concert, but it is happening the day before on December 2nd. And before break, the high school musical Man of La Mancha occurred, and we were able to perform even with the snow day, so that was great, and it was a great success.
Thank you. Other announcements?
Yeah, and I have just one additional announcement around the statewide longitudinal data system. It's a new system that the state requires us to report and utilize, and currently we are experiencing some difficulties in fulfilling that obligation and getting our data into the system. We're not alone. Many other schools are experiencing similar difficulty. The concern is that deadlines are fast approaching. This is where our equalized pupil calculation comes, or is calculated from. So there's a sense of urgency and concern that's emerging rapidly at the present time. So again, just wanted to let you know that that's out there. So
Just out of curiosity, is it system related with this new data system?
it is system related. There's error fields. So the sequencing of how you enter them. It's also, we're trying to transfer information on, similar to others, from Infinite Campus or from Power School, and trying to get it into the data system, and it's not 100% easily transferable. And then when you do enter, it's very, very specific, but it won't necessarily tell you where the error is. It could be a digit that's off, or district or SU code could be off. So again, we have a lot of folks that are working hard to get it done, I'm sure many others are in the state as well, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Any other announcements? All right. We'll move on to agenda item 6, city and school collaboration.
So I met with Tom Hubbard, Kevin Dorn, Alana Blanchard, and Justin Rabideau on the 20th of November. And we went over the MOU, the current MOU that is in place regarding the municipal office that was passed, and also the lease part of the 575 Dorset. And part of that MOU, as you know, calls for regular monthly meetings up until that involves both the conversations around the design ideas that are happening. Again, there's been some sketch drawings, as everyone has seen, around the library or the city office configuration. That's part of the conversation that is part of the MOU. In addition, also the parking conversation parking is an important part of the topic as well. In addition, really trying to make sure that we're aware of the deadlines that are approaching around, their design plans, finalizing permitting, et cetera, but we're at the table to do that. So I'm in the process and have requested kind of a monthly meeting schedule. We haven't yet set those, but I expect either this week or early next week we'll have that. I don't know if board members have any questions on that.
All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7, a negotiations update. And I think this can be very brief. We have, our next meeting is scheduled with the SBEA, the Educators Association, for December 10th. That is on the calendar. Anything else from any other board members? All right. We'll move on to agenda item 8, master planning and visioning.
So there's a lot to report here. We've had a lot of activity. A couple of quick things just to bring you back in line with what we've been doing with master planning. There's been a lot of meetings behind the scene before, but in general, we had on October 12th, we had the principal, we had a meeting, obviously, for our kickoff. We've had principal workshop meeting. We've had a visioning session that happened November 7th. We've had school visits, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about some of those school visits, give you a quick overview, board members. On November 13th, that was the day of the snowy travel day. And then December 11th, we have a planned workshop, second one with the principals. So the schools that we visited were, and again, we packed a lot into a little bit, and you'll hear about this from some people from time to time in the future around skipping lunch and things like that because we were behind schedule and they were troopers to do that. But we went to New View Innovation School, which is right in Cambridge, Mass. We then went to Quincy High School, and following that on that first day, we went to Situate High School, Middle School. And then the second day, we went to Wilmington High School, and then we finished our trip off in Greenfield, so visiting Greenfield High School. So, and then last week, Monday, was Shelburne Community School, a group, not the exact same group, but pretty close, went to the Shelburne Community School. When I say it was almost exact, probably really missed me, right? I was probably the only one who wasn't part of
There
that.
were a couple, like Chris
Yeah.
Phil, who couldn't be there, and there were a
Yeah.
couple ads that hadn't been able to make
Yeah.
the trip to Massachusetts.
So in general, the overall objective of this is to get a different perspective of what others are doing around. Dor Whittier put this together on our behalf after kind of listening to some of the things that we've been talking about. These were not all their projects. There were other projects, but they took into account kind of some project-based learning opportunities, some more traditional approaches and new builds, some renovation spaces, and I would say a fair number of varied options, and looked at performing centers, larger auditoriums, learning common spaces, things like that, where they demonstrated some of that. each school gave us a nice tour, and we had the opportunity to talk with some staff and some students as we saw some of those transitions happen. We have a lot of notes. We're in the process of kind of pulling that all together as the groups that went. We have a meeting that will happen probably in January of pulling folks back together to really talk about what we heard. The purpose of these meetings is for the architect firms really to be listening to our work and then to be coming up with what we're telling them, really. What are the things that we really liked, didn't like, had more questions about, and they're going to be coming up with some ideas. Again, once the culminating kind of collection happens, principal workshop, and some of those things come to an end. So we can give you a little bit more of a flavor, and I'd love to have Bridget give you a little bit more of how she, as a board member, some of the takeaways for her.
Yeah, that was a very thorough update on the trip and where we are. The trip was just really, just to sort of emphasize what David said about the architects did a good job of thinking through a spectrum of really traditional to really innovative schools. So, for example, New View is so far out there. It's a studio model. It was started by architects who, sort of were trained in that model, and the whole curriculum is really just these short 2-week studio sessions. And some of the students were, originally it was meant as a high school where people would go for a semester maybe or a few months and then go back to their regular school. But a few students have loved it so much they've kind of stayed on. So that was a model that's so far out there, I don't think there's any motivation to transition the whole district to that. But it wasn't, I guess what I'm very inarticulately saying is we weren't just looking at buildings. It was really a great way of getting ideas about things, that was so far out there in the future that, is this where learning is going? Is this, how high schools of the future might evolve? And it sort of got a lot of really great conversations going amongst the people who were there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there were a few schools that built great new buildings that really facilitated learning, but really still stuck to a traditional model. So you peek into the classrooms and they still had desks in rows, and they had started to try to do a one-to-one program and then went back to having computer labs because they just found it was easier in the model that they were using. So it was interesting to see that whole range. Yeah, I thought it was a great opportunity for administrators. Our director of learning was there, the high school and middle school principals. But it was a great opportunity for administration and faculty to kind of be together and have some of these discussions, and for faculty who don't normally get a chance to spend a lot of time with one another, the science folks with the performing arts folks, for example, to really kind of bond a little bit and sort of talk about the vision for the district going forward. And so far, Dora Whittier's done a really great job. I think the community visioning session, which we had just before the last board meeting, was also a great success because it was just very thoughtfully planned, and who was going to be there was thoughtfully planned, and really good input from community members and students. And they've done a really good job of emphasizing that we want input from students. And those are some of the most interesting ones, because the grown-ups in the room sometimes all very quickly come to consensus on what might seem like the most exciting thing, and the students say, wait, that just won't work. And so it's great having them involved in the process. So I'll stop rambling on, but it's all very exciting work that's going on, and we just hope to continue the process quickly. So.
The only, the Shelburne Community School was the one that happened on Monday. I was not at it, but I think that also provided perspective in that I think a lot of folks, it's right in our back door, basically, and that's a good example of doing not a huge project, but pretty significant difference to the structure of the inner workings of the school. And that for them, I think, was pretty profound, and really, in concert with their teams and their grade level programming has been really touted to be very important.
Yeah, it was also good to see a Vermont project, because a lot of the Massachusetts schools well, not all the Massachusetts schools are eligible for state funding. There's a significant amount of state funding in Massachusetts. And I wouldn't say that it drives the vision of those schools really, but it does sort of put constraints on them in certain places and leave the door open for more building of certain types of spaces. So for example, there are very big constraints on administrative space and on gym space and all of that in the formula that they use to fund schools in Massachusetts. But they're a little more free with other money in the system. So it was interesting to hear those schools talk about how that impacted them. So it was kind of fun to see Shelburne, where obviously we don't have state funding, and that was really, something they had to sell to the community, and it really, it was great to hear the teachers talk about Shelburne, because we asked how it had changed, what they were doing in terms of curriculum. They said, the vision was always there, and we were always working toward that vision. It was just very uncomfortable to do it in the space that we were in. And one of the big aha moments for me was that we've been talking a lot about student learning, which is obviously the end game for all of it. But one of the teachers really pointed out how much the new spaces and the way they were thoughtfully designed allowed more collaboration between teachers. So this sort of pod model of having a little common space, a pretty big common space really in between a set of classrooms, allowed teachers who might have traditionally been at the end of hallways and only seen each other at lunch or seen each other in passing, they could really kind of come together and see each other between every period, just in passing, and it really helped with coordination and collaboration. So yeah, there's some really good learnings for where we could go right and where we could go wrong, and what to avoid and what to think about as we move forward.
Again, we're not done. There's a lot more to follow, and Dora Whittier is hoping to have some ideas for us around the February timeframe. Again, these will be ideas that they'll, come back around to us, and we'll have the opportunity to have a lot more input, following that. So,
Is that the official next touch point with Dora and Whittier?
The next
well, no,
touch
we
point is-
we have the visioning, the principal's visioning session number 2, and then we'll have a series of things in the middle there. We haven't really defined all of the next pieces in between that and the February timeframe. They're going to need a good chunk of time to discern. And again, they took all of the notes from the visioning session. They took all of the notes from, and again, I have some of those that were collected that Bridget was just talking about. They surveyed us and collected notes and, gave us some feedback on how we responded to those.
Some of the broad outline that was, so December 11th, the principal's workshop, I guess we didn't describe in detail, is really a full day. So we spent half the day with the middle school and half the day with the high school. And we did this once before we did the whole trip to Massachusetts. And this one is really focused on, now that we've kind of seen the spectrum of sort of traditional to non-traditional, what are some of our priorities as a district? And it's really sort of getting down to putting pen to paper about what's important to us and what the architects need to think about. And then I think the broad outline is that they would like to go away and start to formulate some ideas and then bring back together some of the people, like the people who were on the trip, because not all of those people are on the working group that's meeting every couple of weeks, to bring back those folks who have been sort of integral to the process and start to bounce some of those ideas off of them. And it'll be a kind of an iterative process really between, getting their feedback again and then going back for the architects and doing more work. So we certainly don't just sort of leave them and then be surprised in February when they come back with some options for us to start to think about. It's really sort of a lot of contact with them.
We have pretty much weekly.
It's more like
About
every other week,
week.
although John Stewart, who's sort of working on special projects for the district at the moment, is really coordinated, and he seems to be in touch with them pretty much on a constant basis. There's a lot of email back and forth with them about what they need and, and what we're thinking, so.
Connected to that, obviously, are other data collections, the demographic data report, right, from McGibbon, which is, continuing, and he's going to be here on right around the 1st of January to work on that. Again, part of that will connect with all of our current work around our pupil conversation that I shared earlier on the statewide data collection, but looking at developments and making sure we really have it locked down on what what developments that are currently approved and how we're going to count those and look at those, because it's going to be important for us to say this is essentially our student body projections, both current and where we think those are going, right? Because again, as Bridget said, under the Boston Building Authority, Massachusetts Building Authority, there was very clear gates. For us, we don't have those. But we do have those, because we don't want to say our population is going to grow twofold and build accordingly, but we also don't want to build, under capacity either. So that's a fine line of making that correct. Build, renovate, do whatever, so. anyway.
Was there any common theme with the Massachusetts visits around enrollment, student enrollment?
No, not that I noted. I mean, I think in general, most of those schools were having slight increases in enrollment, but there wasn't a dramatic increase in enrollment in any of them
Or
talked about.
decrease?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, they seemed to be pretty, and again, these were schools that were similar in size, with the exception of Newview, which is, a small kind of studio type of, in Cambridge, it's 4,000 square feet, and just innovative. Those are type of kind of schools, there are programs within schools similar to our Big Picture program, but no one really talked specifically about the, enrollment concerns.
And is or are the community visioning, not results, but summary, is that online?
Not yet, they're still working on that. We did push on that today a little bit.
We
and
pushed
they're-
them, because they're going to come next week, because we have another board meeting next week, just because of the Thanksgiving and the sort of reorganizing of our board meetings this time of year. They're coming next week, and we said, so you'll be ready to report out on the visioning? And they said, no, not quite. We have some high-level stuff we can say, but they want to make sure that they've got it right and that they've really absorbed all that information. All of this has happened in such quick succession. It's kind of hard to absorb it and organize it and really think through what it means that quickly. But
Yeah.
I was gonna, for Cole and Arnell, I was gonna suggest you go onto the website to look at that report out, but you might have a chance to hear it at a board meeting in the
Yeah.
future, because your peers will be tapped into as we move forward on this, so, if you hadn't spoken with some of them already.
But this is an important part of disseminating information, just like everyone who went on, either the visioning or the school trips, is to make sure that others are hearing
Yeah.
and and also receiving questions back, like, just like you're asking. Because that's going to only help us to ask those questions that aren't necessarily represented, the voices that aren't there. So, again, we encourage people, if you have questions, get them back to us so that we can, bring them forward.
Anything else on number 8?
We got two
Thanks
parts
for
to
that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move to agenda item 9, budget planning discussion.
So you have, this was sent to you actually today, I think, or maybe yesterday, yesterday. Yeah.
I think it was yesterday, yeah.
Yeah.
It was by email.
So it's also by your place. And so this is work related to our stewardship facility plan. This is a component of our budget, as you know, an important part, but this was, requested to just trying to give a recap around where we have been and where we're going. What are some of the identified areas that we are going to need to address in the budget? So I don't know, Gary has worked hard to pull this together. Again, John Stewart in the past and John Aubin have worked to kind of keep this up. Again, a great, this is a great tool for us. It's one that people often ask us about, and really important. So I don't know how you want to.
I can walk you through the methodology a little bit if you'd like. The first section is the historical summary of facility stewardship. It's kind of a recap of what we've done between 2013 and 2018. 2018 is new. I prepared that for you. You've probably seen the rest of the summaries in the past. And then we took a look at, dovetails nicely into the master planning and visioning discussion that we just had. We looked at the results of phase 1, and we looked at the requirements and the categories of those requirements. And then the methodology for phase 2 is also outlined in your documents, which you're very familiar with. The requirements developed out of phase 1, there are about $31.5 million worth of requirements over the next 10 or so years that were identified through the mechanical, structural, electrical study that was done by Dorr and Whittier. That's a big number and a scary number, but the triggers for many of the big ticket items according to the regulatory and law, are when you renovate more than either new construction or renovate more than 50% of square footage in your existing facilities. So our team, Bart Maselli, John Stewart's been consulting with us, Amity, Lawrence Francis, we kind of took the approach of, and this may be a new term, may have to put it in the dictionary someday, but kind of innovative pragmatism is what we're looking at right now. Trying to look for creative ways to do things to maintain our buildings for the next 4 years, because we figure that's the earliest timeline where we would have a major project based on the results of the recommendations of the master planning and visioning work. So we took a look at ways that we could efficiently do what we needed to do with our buildings to maintain them at a high standard, which was identified for the age of the buildings. They're very well maintained for the next 4 years. So those are highlighted in the last section, and it's broken down for FY 19, 20, and 21 right now for your review. Some of the things that we did this year were out of necessity. We took a look because we lost a position as our HVAC technician, and because of economic factors and market conditions, it's very difficult to hire an HVAC person. Very difficult. And it's difficult to hire people like custodial staff, bus drivers. The market is kind of forcing us to innovate a little bit. So we took a look at how we could structure service contracts from professional service firms to replace some of the capabilities that we had. And what we have found through the work that we have done with companies like New England Air, Temperature Controls of Vermont for AutoLogic, that we will achieve about an annual savings of $25,000 to $30,000 every year by having preventative maintenance service contracts with firms in place, especially for HVAC. So we put those in place this year, which will allow us to not have to expend funds on an HVAC technician in the future. What we found is it's been incredibly effective in improving the reliability and the operation and performance of those HVAC mechanical systems. Our temperature controls have complaints are down as far as the internal climate. It gets at some of the health and safety issues that were identified in phase 1 of the study by a duct cleaning program that we're putting into place. You'll see that in this document for the next few years to improve indoor air quality. So we're kind of looking at innovative ways to address our issues, maintain the building, and save some money. We demoed a robotic electronic floor cleaning system today. We have future demos scheduled. Really necessity-based again, because we're having some difficulty, even though we've been advertising for custodial staff. We're down 3 right now. We haven't found a suitable hire over the last couple of months. Those auto mapping, robotic floor cleaning, auto scrubbers, they have the potential to reduce the requirement, the people requirement, and save us some significant resources. So you won't see a proposal in here for that. It's pre-decisional at this point, but we do have some lease funds that have to be expended from 2018 that could cover the cost of those. So the big ticket items in our facility stewardship plan, 19 is pretty well set where we're going. For 20, we believe that in our life cycle replacement, it's critical, since we only replaced 1 bus in 2019, that we get back on track and request 3 buses under our lease program. Now, to stay consistent, the full purchase price of those buses are in the 2020 stewardship budget. The actual cost is amortized over the life of the lease. And so that really reduces the actual outcome or output of resources in 20 to $543,003 based on the amortization cost, down from the 700 number that is in the report. We left it there because that's how it's been reported over the last 6 years, and I wanted to stay consistent with that. But the amortization costs in the bottom line numbers for both 20 and 21, they're without the reduced amortization cost. So big ticket items, the difference between what we're planning in 20 and 21 really are, some is to be determined. In our existing stewardship plan, we had $100,000 in there to resurface the tennis courts on our property. Not sure if that's going to be a requirement, but I left it in there. Also, the scoreboard replacement and the flagpoles is scheduled in 21. That was an additional $45,000. And with the potential for 575 Dorset being another facility that we need to maintain, I think we budgeted for another snow removal piece of equipment because we don't think we can get it done with what we have. So those are the key differences between 20 and 21. I realize there's about 6 pages of stuff. We went in there pretty detailed, and we went down to even small ticket items to try to, one, identify the things that are must-dos in case we don't do a major renovation or new construction or whatever the result of the master planning and visioning work ends up being. So we think that it's a pragmatic approach to do what we need to do, and it also innovates some ways to save taxpayer resources by using some modern technology and equipment coupled with preventative maintenance service contracts.
There's a lot in here, so again, this is part of the now, feeding you with information as we continue to build our budget process.
So, quick question. So
Mhm.
this is what we should be anticipating seeing in the budget, or at least the first pass? Or
This
is
is-
this just what is in the stewardship plan that is up for consideration?
Correct.
Which
For
one?
consideration, and we have some additional, we're obviously giving you the feedback. I think the most important part is that this is our stewardship plan, and so we want to give it to you in the more purest form before we start to make major changes. Over the years, we've made these pretty significant adjustments, right? We've rescheduled a lot of things, and I think we're going to have to work hard at it again, based on, as you heard Gary say, where are we going to be? We don't want to have a failure. If we have a failure, that's not appropriate. So we have to kind of assess the useful life or the expectancy. And again, as he said, we've done a good job maintaining, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're 100%, sure of the material or or of the mechanical system.
So, and just a follow-up on, so are there any items that are in the plan itself that are not included here because we're considering the renovation of the high school, middle school?
Yep, we put,
Right.
that's right.
Okay, so those are not in this.
So for example, the cafeteria is not in here. And that was the big one in my mind that's keeps getting
Yeah,
rescheduled.
that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So would it be of any value for us to see what we're postponing or?
You could certainly see it, and
I
again,
know we can see it, I just don't know if it's of value enough to have you
sure.
guys spend time producing
you
it
guys.
for us.
I can forward you, I kept the historical copy before we
Right.
made the adjustments, I can forward them.
Okay.
I think that, I
good?
agree, Martin, that would be helpful, because in essence, we're talking about a cost avoidance during the period of time that we're evaluating master planning and visioning, that hopefully is a total avoidance that might be an investment down the road in some alternative.
Right.
I did have a question, Gary, I'm trying to go back and forth here, but there's the subtotals are on the second page, there's an SB school district total, and then it's each of the facilities after that. Is that accurate? And then the back page would be the total. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't transfer the paper as well as.
Yeah.
So just by way of example, a big ticket item at Orchard would be the boilers.
Correct, those are scheduled.
Okay.
One question I had, Gary, is computer software, there doesn't seem to be anything in here. I was just kind of surprised. It feels like we've had some big expenses and maybe we're just done with them for a few years, but it seems like they're missing.
Software expenses was not so much, but what I did not put in here, because I don't think it's appropriate for the facility stewardship plan, is the actual computer equipment, the life cycle replacement for computer equipment. So that, you'll see that in the budget under that.
Under the operating budget as opposed to in the stewardship plan.
It's
Yeah,
a lease, but yes, it's in
Yeah.
the operating budget.
okay.
It's I mean, a little more, we've done this in different areas of the budget, but talking about facility stewardships, I think, being a little bit careful around the migration of too many things within that plan, which,
Okay. I'll give you an
Transparency.
example, the telephone upgrade
Yeah,
work is in the stewardship plan because it's attached to the facility.
Yeah.
But the actual computers are not.
yeah, because I had noticed that in the older ones, there was always a big line item for IT, network switch upgrades, wireless, all that kind of stuff. And I just,
Look at the real early ones, it wasn't in there.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple years that it was,
okay,
but it didn't seem appropriate when we talked about it to put it in the facilities plan.
okay,
'Cause it's really an educational support plan.
okay. So that stuff hasn't gone away, it's just been put in a
Right.
different place in the budget, okay.
I think useful life, sometimes, when they're on a 4-year replacement, people have given us feedback that, should that really reside in the stewardship plan? Technology is a good one. Computers used to be more fixed back in the day, and, now they're obviously much more our program is mobile, so.
And do we have anything in here associated with the the library activity near Rick Marcotte Central relative to the parking lot and reconfiguration of traffic there?
We do not.
We don't.
No, we do not, and, again, that's part of this, city conversation with them around that whole, design of the city offices and that parking as identified in that MOU. That, I think, is an important, that needs to get clarified on those expenses.
Well, and I think,
Yeah.
it's a combination of potentially some incremental, small expense, but also sort of the cost avoidance associated with the memorandum of understanding that was signed to.
Yeah, and so the MOU was pretty clear around some of those, pretty clear on the responsibilities from the city. There's a few pieces like the
Yeah.
design piece that I think needs still to get clarified and how that's gonna get
Yeah, I don't
done.
know if that would have been a project that we would have been looking at,
Yeah.
independent of what might have gone on with the new library city center, but at some point, there's probably a similar scenario that
Yeah.
you described, Martin, of cost avoidance associated with the other project that's occurring near the site. And
Yeah, the other thing at Rick Marcotte, and this is a sort of strangely specific thing, but, yeah, the parking lot and the entryway there is in extraordinarily bad shape. I just happen to know from experience. And so the question really becomes a timing issue of whether we need to do something temporary
that's right.
there, just for safety reasons, for people trying to get in and out of that driveway until the city really does the big reconstruction. And to follow up on that design question, I know that in the MOU we did purposely say that the school district wanted to keep half of the cost of the design of the new traffic flow pattern and all of that, because we wanted some control over what that looked like. So someplace that needs to show up, whether it's here or whether it's someplace else in the budget, but we need to think about that.
Yeah, and again, the city's been, responsive to our, to the needs, and to this plan so far. So again, I want to make sure that's clear, that, I think they're understanding of some of the demands on the property and the need. Other questions?
Thank you.
So the only other thing connected to budget would be just a recap of what we're working on. You know, we're going to need to give you some, you know, first, you know, first pass around the, kind of the budget. And currently, as directed by the board, kind of 3 buckets of budget development. One was a level funded, another one was a continued service budget, and the third really looking at kind of a desired budget, right? And so, again, Amity, Gary, folks have been working to, you know, the level funded and what that would result. So we'll be able to give you some data on that. And then a continued service budget obviously keeps all of this kind of the same. There are some things in there, though, that need to be, it's not just all the same advance. There's some things like the facility, you know, across the street that may need some resourcing. So we've got to do some things even within a continued service, as an example, that is, to make that continued service budget work.
Well, are you talking about 575?
Right, so, you know, we're going to need to do some things in the year prior before we get there, like, how are we going to occupy it?
I was going to say,
there's a
from an
little bit of
operating
dollars.
budget standpoint,
Yeah,
that
so there's
seems premature, but I
there's a
understand.
small amount of money there, I don't, so to say that it's, you know, totally exclusion of that with a continued service, it doesn't make sense. So there's some other examples. Anything else that I know that was one that we talked about, like, I don't really want that one in there, but it really needs to be there. And again, it's small amount, like a $9,000 kind of look at the fit up, look at the structure, et cetera. So, anyway,
Okay,
all right.
all right. We'll move on to agenda item 10.
So this is, we've got 3 items. This one's coming back, which is 2.5, which you've talked about before. And most of the needs were associated with pages 8 and 9 around ends and a little bit on what I would say the planning part. So I'm not wanting you to skip forward if you don't want to, but I think the last time you looked at this, there were some questions. We had an overall policy, we had a little bit of a change, which we can't make that, obviously. I think there was a strikeout on the multi-year plan, that was part of the policy. And then the changes within interpretation simply just, instead of the 2020 plan, it talks about, obviously, the embedded plans that are there, our stewardship plan, which we just talked about, and then the linkages to the ends that are highlighted in new. So those were the changes. Those were the things that you asked for from the last go-round. As far as the financials, you may have additional questions from what you brought up before.
I had a question on the overall policy. I thought we had talked about in the interpretation, it still has this line that the board does not specify priorities for its ends policy, so that I interpret the policy to mean academic proficiency is the top priority. I thought we had said last time
Yeah.
that we felt like they were all sort of equal in stature,
right.
that we
It
had
would-
purposely not done that, and so.
Nope, that's
It-
right. The priority should have come out.
Yeah, that was the
my
only other
stop,
thing that
yeah.
I noticed, because the rest of it seemed to flow
Yep,
to me
right on.
from what the conversation has been.
That's my fault for not taking that
No
out.
worries.
That was supposed to come out with that other,
Yeah.
yep.
I appreciated the addition with respect to the pension. I think that's really
Yeah.
helpful information to see as well.
No, all this was great. It was much clearer and much easier to understand where we were headed in this one, with all the additions to it.
So I did have one question on the evidence for the global ends policy, the overall one, just a couple questions. I understand, I thought it was definitely an upgrade in regarding spending for the various components of our ends. And I do think that certainly spending this money on these various initiatives and such certainly acts as a proxy on how we're spending our money to try to achieve those ends. I will note that I have to note, because I always do, that we don't necessarily know that these initiatives are in fact impacting our ends until we really have those kind of measures in place. That was my comment. My question was on the multi-year planning component, the very last page, that you do reference in your interpretation, you talk about the financial planning, the derived from a multi-year plan, that the revenues align with four different things: the stewardship plan, the demographics, the CIP, the continuous improvement plans, multi-tier system of supports. And there's not any kind of comment about whether in fact the financial planning is aligned with, at least not the demographic data plan, the continuous improvement plan, or the multi-tier system of support. It does talk about the stewardship plan, and it does talk about this concept that we've talked about before of having some sort of financial stewardship plan, and it does mention that. I'm not going to say that I don't find this still in compliance, but I note this for kind of future reference. I'm not asking that, but just, for future reference, I think you should tie it into the other things that you've listed in your interpretation.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready to act on this one?
I think so. With that understanding that there will be a strikeout. I just don't want to see it again.
That's not a good reason.
At least
to
not for
act
6 more months. It was wonderful. It was wonderful, but, it's like
Envelope, the official copy.
reading The Catcher in the Rye the
Is that a
4th
signature
time,
envelope?
it's-
It is not here yet, the signature.
I'll use this one.
That's a bad one.
The one
Catcher in
that
the
has
Rye
everything.
should be more Harry Potter.
Folder there, Alina? The blue, the green?
I can use this one here.
That's fine.
Okay, so starting with the detail policies on 2.5, number 1, superintendent shall not risk incurring those situations or conditions described as unacceptable in the board policy, financial conditions and activities. Reasonable interpretation,
Yes.
Yes.
adequate data,
Yes.
and in compliance.
Yes.
2, omit credible projection of revenues and expenses, separation of capital and operational items, cash flow, disclosure of planning assumptions, and predicted financial impact. Reasonable interpretation,
Yes.
adequate data,
Yes.
and in compliance.
Yes.
3, provide less for board prerogatives during the year than is set forth in the governance investment policy. Reasonable interpretation,
Yes.
adequate data,
Yes.
and in compliance.
Yes.
So the overall policy, the superintendent shall not cause or allow financial planning for any fiscal year or the remaining part of any fiscal year to deviate materially from the board's ends priorities, risk financial jeopardy, or fail to be derived from a multi-year plan. Reasonable interpretation,
Yes.
adequate data,
Yes.
in compliance.
Yes.
Great,
Thank you.
all right. We'll move on to the next one.
Yep, so next one is 2.8, compensation and benefits. And this is the first time you're seeing this one. And again, I think we can do whichever you so desire. We can walk you through the highlighted changes. It's pretty self-explanatory, and then there are attachments that are there that provide you the evidence as well. I don't know what you'd like to do.
I think typically when we see it the first time, we kind of have you go through the highlighted sections. Is the board amenable to that? Great.
So policy 1, again, this is compensation and benefits. It's about the superintendent, he or she changing their own compensation benefits. That's obviously, and so my interpretation is you can't do that. And then the evidence that's associated there provides information around how the board currently conducts the evaluation and the process for that particular contract. And it's provided in verification in attachment 1. And then promise or imply guaranteed employment to others. Again, the interpretation, the evidence is there that we have contract templates that we use. And employment contracts are confidential and filed at the central office. Hiring procedures, some of this you've seen us continue to work on through our HR work as well. So again, that's that particular one. And then third is establish or change compensation and benefits that deviate materially from geographic or professional market and of skilled employees. So the evidence there, again, we've added salary schedule and structure for non-union positions is, again, one of the areas that we're currently under review and has been one that we need to be paying attention to. It's highlighted in evidence that we've been working on that. And there was no change to detail policy 4, obligations for longer than the terms that revenue can safely project. Detail policy 5, the pension benefits, and we've made some specific notes in Amity. I don't know, you probably can highlight a little bit on that.
Just mentioning that our defined benefit plan has an actuary that we have, we hired with future planning also. They were in conjunction with us on doing our actuarial evaluation every year. They provide all the details and data the actuary does for our audit as required by law. And also it helps us to plan and budget for our contributions each year for those plans. So it just talks about how many people are involved in the benefit structure. So it's not just the district that's responsible. We have several parties involved. That's what that was added.
And then the overall policy, there's no changes from the last reporting period. And then you have the attachments accordingly.
One
Mhm.
note I'd have on detail policy 1 is it doesn't reference, and I'm not sure it needs to be referenced or not, just that what is filed along with the contract is also a current performance assessment.
You could do, I mean, I'm fine to add that. Typically, under compensation and benefits, it's not necessarily the place for that to go, but it's not wrong. It's obviously tied to the hiring process or compensation.
Is it
process.
referenced elsewhere?
It's not in this one. We haven't, I'm not objecting to do that. Again, it's about changing the compensation is, I mean, I'm just trying to stick to the policy. I'm fine to do that if you
Well,
want.
and I'm
'Cause
I'm
it-
just sort of thinking back, that would be the document that would have indicate where there was variable comp, what the rationale was for that. So
Yeah,
to me, it's supporting documentation, but if there's another place it goes, I guess I'm open to that. I'm thinking it would be supporting documentation on that variable component.
yeah, it shows up in the attachment, right? 1. You see, I mean, it shows up that there's dollars attached to that, right? So your point is,
Yeah.
we could add
okay.
it, right?
Yeah,
I'm
it
just-
is there, yeah.
Yeah. As evidence. I typically, when I'm trying to respond, is the policy is about changing. And compensation is the policy. So the evidence, I was just indicating that I don't do that.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah,
Where,
good.
should it be there or not, that's all.
I mean, I think that this is sufficient to show that there's compliance, certainly. I mean, it could be helpful information in the future, but I don't think it's something that would make me find that the evidence is insufficient.
Any other questions?
I think the policy overall looks good. This may not be the right place to ask this question, but future planning associates, every time I see the name now, it kind of,
Triggers?
yeah, I'm triggered a little bit. So I guess the question is that a relationship that we're continuing? And is there sort of a logic behind that? Is it a completely different?
Two very separate parts of future planning associates. There's probably more than two, but I only know of the two, and they are very separate. They have different presidents for those pieces. So we've had a very, very good relationship with future planning. They, we haven't, until this year, when we went through the disaster we had never had any issues with future planning, and certainly not on the pension side. They've actually been great to work with, and they're responsive. So it may be something we want to look at if another company we want them to handle the defined contribution, or the defined benefit plan, not the contribution, but the defined benefit plan is with, they're overseeing. But we've added that extra layer with the actuarial now, which makes me feel more confident, because they don't have that part of the business. They actually prepare the paperwork for us, but they aren't monitoring, they don't create the actuary, they don't define the benefit, to be honest. So the relationship's been great. I totally, believe me, if there's a trigger, I know it too. So, that may be something we want to look at down the road, is to find, maybe go out for bid on a contract with another company to handle that defined benefit plan. I know. No, I understand. Believe me, I do. It's a tough one to put in a report right now.
It has performed well.
Yeah, and because we have also SEI, who does the actual investments, we have so many other different, their piece, future planning's piece is actually so reduced that, I feel like they're doing their due diligence, and we haven't had any trouble. But it probably wouldn't be bad for us to think about looking at another company.
Which I think is true with anything that we do, right? We should be looking at, on
Every
an
few
ongoing
years,
basis.
looking at-
We have
yeah.
requirements,
Yeah.
bid requirements, so, I think your point is well made. And again, I think to Amity's point, we're not unhappy with what they're currently doing, but we should be doing our due diligence for sure.
Any other questions or comments? Now, I need to be refreshed. We could
I think we can proceed.
We could proceed on this one.
You could,
correct?
yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Like
readings versus,
policy,
yeah,
we're
exactly.
not, right.
All right. So there were no specific recommended changes, just that question. So on detail policy 1, change the superintendent's own compensation and benefits. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
And in compliance. Promise, number 2, promise or imply permanent or guaranteed employment. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
In compliance. Detail policy 3, establish or change compensation and benefits that deviate materially from the geographical or professional market median for the skills employed. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
And in compliance.
Yes.
Detail 4, create obligations over a longer term than revenues can be safely projected, in no event longer than 1 year, and in all events subject to losses in revenue. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
In compliance.
Yes.
Detail 5, establish or change pension benefits. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
In compliance. And the overall policy 2.8, with respect to employment compensation and benefits to employees, consultants, contract workers, the superintendent shall not cause or allow jeopardy to financial integrity or to public image. Reasonable interpretation?
Yes.
Adequate data?
Yes.
And in compliance.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's start the next one.
2.0, yeah. So 2.0 is global executive constraint, and we've made some pretty significant changes to this one. Interpretation has not changed since the last time you saw it. Evidence, however, has had some changes specific to some of the processes that we're using to track and/or support employees, which is stated in 1. Some of our posting, so again, there's a pretty, and I don't want to read every one of those unless you have maybe questions, but obviously our federal required postings and what we're doing to ensure that we're maintaining compliance. Schedule of regular meetings, mid-level managers, informal meetings. Again, this is all about informing and making sure people are informed. Number 5, procedures specific to ADA compliance, family medical leave, in Vermont leave, COBRA, et cetera. 6 is about workers' comp. Again, just these all have attachments to them to give you indications. OSHA compliance is 7. Hazing at 9. Again, I'm happy to go through each one of them, but we're trying to give, again, not all of the pieces of evidence, but a good amount of evidence that indicates to you that we are providing employees with support and information as appropriate. So again, that continues to move through. 14 is about emergency preparedness, which is longer than some of the others, but we give some examples in the highlighted area that we haven't done before around some of the processes around how we make sure folks are getting the information necessary. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. This is the first time you're seeing this one. There's a lot of information. I mean, we had a different approach in this last time. I think this is more relevantly connected evidence to the policy than what we had before. We had a lot on, more specific around some of the safe school stuff, and we've again expanded it to show more around some of our compliance. So I don't know if people have questions, comments.
Any board questions or comments?
I can say Sure, I'll say that I thought the hiring process, and actually I believe it was the termination process, the termination procedures was very thorough. I was impressed.
Yeah, my initial impression on this, David, is there's been enough changes. I'd like to
Yep, reread.
take it one more
Fair.
time, and at least one more time, and take a look through it.
Great.
So we'll add that to the next agenda. All right, seeing nothing else on that, we will move to setting the agenda for December 5th. So if
So we're
this
going
is
to bring
not on it, we'll
over
add it.
20, yeah. So we can just get rid of 2.5 and 2.8. We'll keep 2.0 on. There's one, and Alex, we've got the youth risk behavior survey there, but this, Alex had met with me last week, late last week, early last week. I don't know, about specific to youth risk behaviors.
Right.
Specific to vaping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, probably we should add vaping or add another bullet below youth risk behavior survey.
Well, I
Again,
think we're going to add the letter to the legislators
mhm.
for the
Yep.
next agenda.
That covers one part of it. There's more to talk about. This can be a subset of youth risk behavior survey. That'd be great.
Yeah, I guess, and Alex, correct me if you're wrong, I mean, obviously under the youth risk behavior survey, it will come up.
Right.
But I want to be, I don't know if the board's intention was to call that out more specifically so that if somebody's reading it, when we post it next, whether they're going to see it or not. It's up to you.
Yeah.
You've had conversations about should it be on the agenda or not.
Mhm.
It is embedded in the youth risk behavior survey, but I don't know that if somebody's waiting to hear about more, will they catch that?
Yeah, well, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is about 70 pages long, and I'm mostly interested in the part that relate to nicotine use by kids, which is about 1 or 2 pages. So we could shorten it to just those 2 particular pages, although I don't want to be narrowing the agenda in case we want to discuss the whole thing.
Is somebody coming to talk about that?
I have not yet set that up.
Okay.
So again, this was initially kind of centered around tobacco, nicotine, and vaping.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's connected to youth risk, and I think we made that kind of connection. I'm not really sure, again, as Alex said, it's a big document.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I want to hear kind of the trends more broadly as well. I mean, I want to hear about nicotine, but I want to hear about drinking marijuana, all the things that are in that.
Kind of general
Yeah,
overview.
general, and have somebody highlight where the major concerns are and what might be getting done to address those major concerns. So that, I mean, that's,
Fair.
and
I think that was the tone of the last board discussion, is we'd sort of start at this level because we knew there was information embedded in this that included your particular area of interest, but that represented an update the board typically has received as well, and that is broader. That was my impression.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I don't think we were owed, or I think this maybe is the baseline for the condom availability protocol and the measures that.
for instance, yeah, yeah, that's another item, yeah.
Yeah.
All those things wrapped up.
So it's fine. I mean, I guess I'm good on providing a general overview of the youth risk behavior survey and highlight the areas that are there.
And certainly address the nicotine
Right,
issue
and so
as well.
do you want to do a sub-bullet of vaping, nicotine,
That's
and
fine.
Yeah.
something like that?
Okay.
That's fine.
And I was just thinking now, David, if you want to meet with me again to go over it or not, we can do that. We could just do it through email as well.
Well, I think when that particular item comes up, Alex, then that would be an opportunity for you to provide some highlighted information
Right.
on.
Yeah, the letter.
And the sub-bullet point, I would describe as
Good to
this,
be the king.
you mentioned 2 pages, Alex. I would
About that.
use the same language that's used in the youth risk behavior. I don't know
Specific to nicotine.
what it's
vaping.
called, but if it's going to be a subset, it should reflect the
To
youth
the-
risk behavior versus what we're hoping, or what we think we were going to get out of it. I don't know what they call that section or not. if
I
it's-
don't either.
Yeah.
It's-
I mean, if they have a section on nicotine and a section on vaping, that we
Yeah.
can call those out.
Specifically.
But I don't
to
know
the
if they
report.
maybe have a section on substances or something. I don't
Yeah,
really
they
know.
do have a section on substance abuse, and it goes, alcohol, marijuana, nicotine, opiates, and maybe other things like glue. So, my obvious interest is with the nicotine portion, which is, maybe 2 or 3 pages. So,
But what I'm hearing is to use the same title,
The same language.
language that's in the
report,
youth
yeah.
risk behavior
Okay.
survey that either kicks it off as
Yeah.
an overall topic, and then we could
Mhm.
use,
Mhm.
again, to use the same language, so if somebody goes back and reads the report, they could.
Yeah, they know where it came from.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Is this from the most recent survey that was taken during the 16-17 school year?
I
That's right.
believe so,
Yep, that's right, Cole.
yeah. So Cole, I've been sort of beating the drum on the epidemic of vaping that's emerged at high schools. And it's something that's, it's caught on very quickly, only in the last 3 or 4, 5 years. And something else that I've learned recently is that it's also something that a lot of people who aren't being around it aren't seeing it because the marketing of it is so segmented. So if you like a particular thing on Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media, that'll drive vaping ads towards you based on your particular interest. But if you're someone like me who I don't know, maybe I like an 80s rock band, for example, or whatever, and I like, I don't know, Styx, the band, or whatever. I'm not going to see a vaping advertisement on my Facebook feed. But if I like, I don't know, something else, you get the idea. So it's something that's been, no, wrong.
Okay, we gotta stay on our agenda. I'm gonna get dinged
So
here.
you get the idea. A lot of adults have not caught on to it. I have because I have personal history with it. No, I don't have personal history. I have a relationship with it. A hate relationship. So anyhow, thank you.
Okay, so we'll add that.
Good,
So-
and we do
Any-
want to add, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
Bridget.
one question on this, on the SBAC scores. Are we going to see those beforehand?
Yeah.
Because that's usually a pile of data to sort
Yeah,
of sort through, and I don't feel like we have a very good discussion about it unless we've had some
Yeah,
time to look
it
at
is gonna come to.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not so sure about how much I'm gonna get to you on the
This will
youth
be
risk
before,
behavior.
this is
Yeah,
a
because
week.
this is around the corner, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
This is like here, so, yes, we are gonna get you some smarter balance, assessment data. Evaluation stuff we'll have, the youth risk behavior survey, I'm not sure. I mean, we'll get the report and we'll get the general, I don't know how much I'm gonna get that ahead of time.
Okay.
All right, and then we wanted to add somewhere the discussion of a letter to the legislators.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we also have the potential to request that they raise the tobacco age, and I'll have a few things that I'll expand on that, and maybe I should just connect with you, Martin, one-on-one, okay?
So we'll plunk that in somewhere and,
Yep.
Under budget planning, I think we need to keep on our agenda the budget book redesign.
Yes.
I know that we've got so much on our plates, but I'm getting concerned that it's December, basically, and it'll be very soon to have to hit the button and just populate that budget book and
well,
turn
the
it around.
principals are aware that they've got pages, and so we're giving them some past examples, not that they have to follow it, but we've at least got it
Yeah.
going and
It might
given
just be
some
nice to see
deadlines.
sort of like what the
Yeah, the-
envisioned sort of template or outline or whatever it is,
Mhm.
would be helpful.
And do we need the sub-bullet on visits to other schools still, under master planning and visioning?
I think they're gonna continue to talk about that, Elizabeth, so if somebody is reading it, I think it might be good still to keep it there.
Okay.
Just because they're gonna highlight, some of our, because Dor Whitty will be here and they'll be talking about that. I don't care. I mean, actually, in the plan will come out of that, but maybe some people will be interested and that might be a draw.
Okay. All right, anything else for the December 5th agenda? All right. We'll move on to future agenda items. We can probably take off the youth risk behavior survey, right?
Teacher evaluation system update, because it's actually on the.
You're being bold about taking them off until they happen, but I'm all right with that.
Well, good point.
But it's fine. I mean, it's
Wait,
fine.
where did you see the teacher evaluation?
Well, it's gonna be,
Future agenda.
it's in
We're
the
talking about
December.
the future agenda items. Well,
December.
the teacher, we're
Second to
getting,
last?
we're getting an evaluation update under administrative reports, right?
That's right.
And that's
Oh,
on,
there it
the-
is.
that's on the
Got it.
teacher
Got it.
evaluation, yeah.
All right. Okay, I think we have a number of minutes to just review. So I'll just start by date and let me know if there are any changes or modifications. First, the minutes of the November 5th meeting, which was a negotiation subcommittee meeting. So seeing none, that is approved. November 7th.
I had some tiny changes on page 2, under city school collaboration. I'm not sure if your name is meant to be in there, Elizabeth. It says David Young noted, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
think I'm I'm on November 7th.
Yeah, Wednesday, November 7th. Are you talking about the visioning session or we had 2 meetings?
Oh,
that
I'm on
day?
the visioning one
You're on the
first.
visioning. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I'm back on the other one. Got it. So
Sorry.
anything on the visioning one, let's start with that.
I had nothing on the visioning one. Martin, did you have anything on the visioning one since you were there too? Okay.
Okay, nothing on visioning, so we're on the regular meeting.
Yeah. So under city-school collaboration, the first sentence talks about what David said, and then the second sentence says, she said that she and David Young would be meeting with Kevin Dorn. So I'm not sure if it was meant to say Elizabeth said that she and David Young would be meeting with Kevin Dorn and Helen Reilly in the next couple of weeks, or if that was meant to be David said that he and you, it's just awkward because it,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can just say
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
that's fine.
no, it's kind of a silly, small one. And another silly small one, on page 4, under the budget calendar, it says that the board requested that the January 15th Citizens Budget Advisory Committee meeting be changed. We suggested, I don't think we sort of requested or said that it had to be, but we just sort of suggested that that might be a good idea.
Okay. So why don't we take we'll take the regular November 7th meeting minutes off approval tonight and just make
Bring
those
back.
modest
Tiny, yeah,
corrections.
tiny changes.
November 12th, which was a working subcommittee. I didn't see anything there.
There were two different, and no, I haven't seen on that one.
No. And there was,
Negotiations.
yes,
On the
negotiations
12th.
meeting. And I didn't see anything there.
I didn't either.
And November 19th.
Nothing on that one either.
Okay, so we'll just take the go ahead, Delana.
You missed one,
Um,
Monday, November 5th, the evening one of the city.
Well, did it get attached later?
Yeah, it got attached.
Okay, hold on, I think I put that in my. Yes, okay,
Yep,
so we
there's-
have the November 5th one, which was the joint meeting with the city council. I had read those before, and those were fine to me. Okay, so just the regular meeting on November 7th will hold.
Bring back.
And everything else we can sign off on. Any questions or comments on agenda item 14, account payable orders 17, 18, and 19? All right, and agenda item 15, we are looking for a motion to approve an AP order check. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and so this is the one,
Oh,
Go ahead,
this one
Gary.
got modified.
There's a new memo, somehow we forwarded you the November 8th memo with
Yeah.
with the approval for tonight instead of, so we adjusted that to November 28th. Put the proper memo in. The amount was different on the 8th.
So I do have the November 28th in front of me. It is correct on the agenda, though. Yeah. So we're looking for a motion to approve a check to the Howard Center for Human Services in the amount of $96,655.70.
So moved.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And all in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn. We have a few signatures.